Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Breaking news overnight out of Taiwan as the island was hit with a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. Authorities say at least 9 people are dead and nearly 900 injured. More on rescue efforts to free over 70 people trapped in highway tunnels.
Former President Trump once again challenging President Biden to debate and criticizing his handling of the border. This after both made gains in key battleground states in yesterday's presidential primaries.
Wisconsin voters decide there will be no more Zuckerbucks allowed in state elections. 2 ballot measures are projected to pass in yesterday's primary. They will change how state elections are held.
Former President Trump's legal team files another request for the judge in the so-called hush money case to recuse himself. That's over an alleged conflict of interest. And former Trump lawyer Peter Navarro asks the Supreme Court again to let him stay out of jail while he appeals his contempt of Congress verdict.
Customs officials ready to deport over 200 illegal immigrants charged in a riot at the southern border last month. That's after an El Paso judge on Sunday ordered some released.
The end of a 132-year-old conglomerate that was once the most valuable American corporation. General Electric splits into 3 companies.
The White House wants NASA to create a new time standard for the moon called Coordinated Lunar Time. What that is and why it's necessary.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd. And also this morning, the world is worried for Taiwan. I really hope they can save all these or rescue all these people that are still trapped in the tunnels.
Yes, definitely. What a harrowing situation there. And besides the immediate threat to human life, this quake underscores the vulnerability of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Employees had to evacuate, but now they've returned to work at some factories.
Right, so that's topping our news this morning. Taiwan was hit by its strongest earthquake in 25 years today at around 8 a.m. local time. Rescue teams are rushing to free dozens of people trapped in highway tunnels after the 7.4 magnitude tremor on the island's east coast.
Officials say at least 9 people are dead and over 800 are injured. The quake sparked tsunami warnings across the region as authorities ordered evacuations. That included warnings in southern Japan and the Philippines. That warning has since been lifted, but officials told people to stay alert.
Several strong aftershocks and tremors were felt across the island. Authorities say at least 125 buildings collapsed and over 100 buildings were damaged. The full extent of the impact is still being assessed.
Taiwan's National Fire Agency says 77 people are still trapped in road tunnels after the quake. Local reports say at least 127 people are trapped in total. The severity of the injuries is not yet known. The NFA said all the deaths were in Hualien County, including 3 hikers killed by falling rocks at a tourist spot called Toroko Gorge. Rescuers this morning headed to 12 people stuck on a trail there. The group includes 2 Canadians. The agency said falling rocks also killed a truck driver in the region.
Officials say thousands of homes were left without power and a major highway closed due to landslides and rockfalls. Taiwan's defense ministry dispatched military personnel to help with disaster relief. Schools and workplaces suspended operations as aftershocks hit.
Taiwan's Central Weather Administration is warning that powerful aftershocks as high as magnitude 7 are expected until the end of the week. We'll keep you updated on the crisis in Taiwan.
And just before the earthquake, Taiwan's defense ministry said it detected 30 Chinese regime aircraft and 9 naval vessels operating around the island. That was up until 6 a.m. local time.
The Defense Ministry said 20 of the aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait Meridian Line and also the southwest area of its air defense identification zone.
So back to the U.S. now. 4 states went to the polls yesterday in the presidential primaries.
But some voters didn't see the point in voting for candidates who are already presumptive nominees.
President Biden and former President Trump clinched their party's nominations earlier this year.
Both won easily in Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, and Wisconsin. But the numbers show a deeper discontent among American voters.
Rhode Island and Connecticut saw a significant percentage of uncommitted votes in the Democratic primaries.
And some Republican voters are still voting for Trump's rivals who have already dropped out of the race.
And to hear more on how to interpret these numbers, we bring in Amber Duke. She's a Washington editor at The Spectator and a fellow at the Steamboat Institute. Good morning, Amber. Good to see you. So first, let's talk about how these primary races turned out yesterday. Everyone, as we heard, had their eyes on the protest votes. How do you interpret the results?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much cause for concern for either Biden or Trump here, just because it is late in the game right now. Both of these candidates are the presumptive nominees. They're going into their respective conventions with enough delegates to secure them being the nominee. And so a lot of people did not turn out. And so you're going to see a higher percentage of protest votes because those people are going to be more motivated to participate later in the process. If there's any number that should raise a little bit of an alarm bell, it would be the 15% uncommitted vote that came across in Rhode Island against President Joe Biden, because we have seen that uncommitted has been a more specific ideological protest as opposed to just an anti-Biden or we want somebody else. Those voters mostly are choosing uncommitted to raise contention with the president's policy as it comes to the war in Gaza and how Israel is conducting its offensive against Hamas and the Palestinians. And that's something that's not going away. Those voters have actually gained ground since the primary process first started. And they're signaling that unless there is a change in policy at the top level, that they very well might not come home to the Democratic Party and vote for Biden in November.
Right, some very interesting points that you make there. And also former President Trump is returning to the campaign trail in Michigan and Wisconsin. So to talk to me about the importance of those states specifically and what the polling numbers say about each president's chances there.
Michigan and Wisconsin are definitely key states heading into November. They have been battleground states for quite some time now. They were states that former President Trump was able to flip in 2016 and sort of break the blue wall that had gone to Obama twice. And he was able to win over those working class manufacturing belt Americans. And then they went back to the Democratic Party for Biden in 2020. They're basically a toss-up right now. Early polling shows the former president leading Biden by perhaps a couple of percentage points, but they're mostly within the margin of error. And basically either man has to win one or both in order to really be competitive this fall.
Got it. So what was Trump's message there? I know he focused on the border crisis, but how did that work out for him?
Right. So the former president is calling it Biden's border bloodbath. And this is a manipulation of a comment that he made earlier on the campaign trail that caused a lot of ire among the left and among the media, where they accused him of using violent rhetoric because he said that it would be a bloodbath for the auto industry and perhaps the country writ large if Biden were reelected. He's now using that comment to refer to what's happening on the southern border with 100 plus migrants dying in their journey to the southern border, as well as some American citizens being sexually assaulted or murdered within the interior of the United States by illegal aliens. So really just reusing that phrase. And the border is an issue in swing states in particular, even if they're not on the southern border, because now what's happening is that illegal aliens are being bussed or flown around the country. And so what used to be a problem that was perhaps more exclusive to places like Texas or Arizona has now really become an issue for Americans around the country. And the current president is arguing that Republicans are now responsible for the crisis because they're not passing a Senate immigration bill, whereas the former president points out that President Joe Biden could reenact some of the executive orders that he put into place when he was in office in order to help stem the flow of illegal aliens.
Okay, really interesting. Thank you so much, Amber Duke. Unfortunately, we're out of time here, but I appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Former President Trump campaigning in key battleground states. NTD's Jack Bradley is in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where Trump held a rally yesterday. Jack, what's the latest on the Trump campaign?
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Well, Wisconsin's primaries just closed out yesterday, and President Biden won 79 delegates, while President Trump won 41. And Trump did hold a rally here last night in Green Bay, and the crowd was packed, full of supporters. It was filled to the brim. And Trump called out on Biden, challenging him to a debate anytime, anywhere, yet again. And he also criticized Biden again for his handling at the southern border and the record surge in illegal immigration and the subsequent violent crimes that are being committed by illegal immigrants in the U.S. Take a look at some of the highlights from that rally.
We have an empty podium right here to my right. You know what that is? That's for Joe Biden. I'm trying to get him to debate. Let's go have a good, solid, friendly debate, just a friendly where our country is going, because our country is going to hell, and we're not going to let it happen.
Following the rally, I spoke with Nathan Worcester, an Epoch Times reporter who's been following the Trump campaign, and he told me that this rally in particular, a lot has come out of it, where Trump is reaching these voters who are more moderate on key issues. Take a look.
He really emphasized the border bloodbath theme that the campaign is running with. It was also interesting to see him reiterate his talk of making sure that Social Security and Medicare are not touched. He is not someone who is conventionally right or left, and I think that's a great example of the way that he does politics, the way that he's able to reach a crowd in a state like Wisconsin, historically more of a Rust Belt, upper Midwest state that in the past has been more Democrat. Now it's purple, leaning a little Republican.
Now, coming out of these primaries, voters in Wisconsin voted for two measures that were championed by Trump. One that would restrict private money flowing into elections, and another that would restrict election staff to only being those election officials designated by law. Now, Biden won Wisconsin in 2020 by 0.6 percentage points, and Trump took the lead by 0.7 percentage points in 2016. But now this all comes down to how voters will really vote in November. Kevin, back to you.
That's a great update, Jack. And yeah, that slushy rain turning to snow didn't really stop those attendees from coming out and showing support. Jack Bradley, thank you.
And President Trump also endorsed financier Eric Hovde yesterday. He's running for a U.S. Senate seat against incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin.
Wisconsin is among a small number of swing states that will be critical in determining the presidency and control of the Senate.
House Republicans introduced a motion yesterday to rename Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia after Trump.
The move has attracted criticism from Democrats.
The bill aims to designate the major international hub Donald J. Trump International Airport. A sponsor of the bill said it would be a symbol of freedom, prosperity, and strength.
The airport is currently named after John Foster Dulles, who served as Secretary of State under Eisenhower. The House GOP whip said that in his lifetime, the nation has never been greater than under the leadership of President Trump.
House Democrats panned the move, with Virginia Congressman Don Byers saying Dulles will never be named after Trump.
Even if the bill makes it out of the House, it'll have little chance of being taken up in the Democrat-controlled Senate.
And now, an update on Israel's war against Hamas. Israel yesterday apologized for an airstrike that killed aid workers in Gaza, and another airstrike in Syria leads to fears of escalation in the conflict. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
Israel's military chief said early on Wednesday that misidentification led to strikes that killed 7 international aid workers with the World Central Kitchen in Gaza on Monday.
I want to be very clear. The strike was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions. It shouldn't have happened.
The food charity founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres said it was immediately suspending operations in the region. Israel's military said an independent body would conduct a thorough investigation that would be completed in the coming days. The deaths of the aid workers threatens to set back efforts by the U.S. and others working on a sea route to bring aid from Cyprus. Those killed include 3 British nationals, an Australian, a Polish national, and an American-Canadian dual citizen. Some of Israel's closest allies condemned the incident. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he expressed his nation's outrage to his Israeli counterpart, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is completely unacceptable. When I spoke with the Prime Minister, I emphasised the importance of full accountability and transparency.
Yesterday, the Pentagon said Israel was behind another airstrike in Damascus, Syria. The strike reportedly killed 7 people, including 2 top Iranian commanders, at what Iran described as its consulate. Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh denied any U.S. involvement in the attack and said they were not notified by the Israelis about their intentions. She added the U.S. does not support attacks on diplomatic facilities. Israel has not claimed responsibility for the attack. Iran vowed to respond, stoking fears of an escalation in the conflict. The UN Secretary General said any miscalculation could result in devastating consequences. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said Iran was responsible for escalating tensions in the region and told CNN the building was used for military purposes by Quds forces disguised as a civilian building. He would not comment on the strike, but said Iran was the main perpetrator of atrocities in the region through proxies in neighboring countries. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Coming up, crews at the Baltimore bridge disaster open a second channel for smaller ships as most commercial shipping remains blocked by the wreckage and the stranded container ships that caused the crisis.
Customs officials set to deport over 200 illegal immigrants charged in a riot at the southern border last month. That's after a judge on Sunday ordered some released.
Trump's legal team has again asked for the judge in the so-called hush money trial to recuse himself. They say the judge's impartiality is in question because his daughter works for a political consultancy firm. Stay tuned for that and more after the break. Welcome back and good morning. Again, quick correction. Trump's team is seeking to have the judge in the hush money case recuse himself in the case, not the trial. The trial starts April 15th.
Got it. Thanks. All right. Moving on to the Baltimore bridge collapse. Crews at the collapse site opened a second temporary channel yesterday. The channel is meant to allow a limited amount of traffic around the mangled wreckage.
Debris has blocked the vital port's main shipping route since the disaster 1 week ago.
The channels are open mostly for ships in the cleanup effort, along with some barges and tugs stuck in the Baltimore port.
Officials said yesterday crews are working to open a third channel to let bigger vessels through.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore said rough weather has added daunting challenges over the past 2 days.
Officials say diving conditions to recover bodies of 4 construction workers believed to be trapped under the wreckage are still unsafe.
And former President Trump is asking for the judge to recuse himself from the so-called hush money case.
Trump's lawyers argue that the judge's daughter, who works as a Democratic political consultant, poses a potential conflict of interest.
Trump made a similar request last year for Justice Juan Merchan to recuse himself, but the judge denied to do so after an ethics panel found that his daughter's work did not pose questions about his impartiality.
In a court filing dated April 1st, Trump's lawyers argued the trial would financially benefit Merchan's daughter's firm, Authentic Campaigns. The company describes itself as a progressive political consulting firm.
Meanwhile, Trump posted a $175 million bond in his civil fraud case. This will temporarily keep his properties from being seized.
A judge found Trump liable for $454 million in total, saying he and his company executives lied about Trump's net worth for tax benefits. Let's delve into Trump's criminal trial in New York with Paul Kamenar, the lead counsel at the National Legal and Policy Center. Paul, it's always great to have you with us here. Judge Merchan has not recused himself. Even when this issue over his daughter's work is brought up last year, Trump's team is pushing for him to recuse himself now for a similar reason. Is this time any different?
Yes, it is different by degree. right now they've got evidence that her campaign consulting group, Authentic Campaigns, received $93 million in fees from working on the Biden and Kamala Harris campaign, from Adam Schiff's campaign, et cetera, et cetera. So there's tons of money coming in to his daughter. And the recusal last year that they asked, what happened there, the judge said, oh, I asked the ethics committee whether I have to get off because of my daughter's work. And the committee said no, but he won't release what he asked the ethics committee what was the issue. So, right now it's more serious. It's clear that there's a conflict. In fact, according to the statute here, I'm looking at it here, section 100.3, it says if you have a relative that's within 6 degrees of separation from you who has a substantial interest in this case, you got to get off the case. 6 degrees. His daughter's the 1st degree. And she stands to get a lot of money because the more that they go after Trump, the more that her clients rise in the polls and so forth. So it's clear he's got to recuse himself this time.
Okay, well, thanks for bringing a lot of backup information to that. Is the gag order that Merchant put on Trump fair in that it's necessary to protect the family members of those involved in the case, or does it violate the First Amendment?
Oh, it clearly violates the First Amendment. I mean, it's one thing to have a gag order to prevent someone from basically threatening a witness or the judge, whatever. They extended this to the judge's family. The judge himself is not covered by the gag order. Neither is Alvin Bragg. But his daughter, why can't Trump say, wait a minute, this is unethical. She's standing to make millions of dollars. That's just factual First Amendment information. So this gag order should certainly be challenged, and I predict it will be overturned. And if he doesn't recuse himself and he gets convicted, he's got a lot of arguments on appeal to get that all overturned.
Well, and Paul, I will point out here, it may not be any surprise to you that the New York City Bar Association is supporting Justice Merchant and his gag order, saying that former President Trump's extrajudicial statements went beyond defending himself against attacks and are threatening and inflammatory here. Is Trump's statement about the judge's daughter, Lauren Merchant, in violation of that gag order?
I don't think so. And if it is, it's totally unconstitutional because he's just basically pointing out factual information that everybody should know about to show how unfair this whole trial is. I mean, here you have Alvin Bragg, who actually picked this judge to be the judge on the case and all these other Trump cases. So I don't think he's violating it. And if he is, and sanctioned one way or the other, that should be immediately appealed.
So, Paul, can you go back to the conflict of interest here, the alleged one, and explain a little bit more deeply on how any financial benefits to Merchant's daughter would lead to his gain?
Well, like I said, the regulation, the statute says it doesn't have to be to his gain, but anybody that he's related to or his wife's related to the 6th degree. So a third cousin twice removed if he's making money on this case. He has to disqualify himself. This is a very broad, and the standard is there an appearance of conflict, not that there's an actual conflict. So for the judge to say, oh, I got an ethics opinion saying I don't have an actual conflict, I'm sorry, Judge, that doesn't cut it. So it's clear that this judge should be disqualified.
Well, thank you so much again for your analysis. Paul Kamenar, lead counsel at the National Legal and Policy Center.
Thank you.
And former Trump advisor Peter Navarro is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to allow him to remain out of prison while he appeals his contempt of Congress case. Navarro submitted an emergency request last month. It was denied, and he reported to prison the following day. Now he wants the Supreme Court to reconsider. Navarro has served 15 days of his 4-month sentence. Supreme Court rules allow parties whose emergency applications are denied by a single justice to resubmit that request to another justice. In a letter yesterday, Navarro's attorneys asked Justice Neil Gorsuch to review his request. Navarro was found guilty of contempt of Congress for defying subpoenas from the January 6th House panel.
Customs officials are working to deport over 200 illegal immigrants charged in a riot at the El Paso, Texas border last month. A Customs and Immigration Enforcement official told the Epoch Times yesterday that ICE agents had lodged immigration detainers on 215 people involved in the incident. Video shared on social media shows hundreds of illegal immigrants rushing troops at a border fence after a group tore down razor wire. The Texas Department of Public Safety arrested the group and booked them at the El Paso County Court. A judge ordered some to be released on their own recognizance. The ICE spokesperson stated 64 individuals have been taken into ICE custody to date and are being processed for deportation. He said deportation officers arrested 4 involved in the stampede over the weekend after the El Paso County Detention Facility released them. The spokesperson said another 60 were released directly to enforcement and removal operations on Monday after being processed in the detention facility.
Coming up next, Jetblue's new checked bag fees now depend on the day you fly, how much you can expect to pay during peak times.
And a senator is asking President Biden to investigate Nippon Steel's alleged ties to China. That's ahead of the company's possible buyout of U.S. Steel.
And the end of a 132-year-old conglomerate that was once the most valuable American corporation. General Electric has split into 3 companies. Don Ma, host of Business Matters, unpacks these stories and more coming up. Welcome back. Joining us now is NTD's Business Matters host, Don Ma, to give us the latest updates from the financial world.
Don, what's up with GE? This is some big news.
Yeah, guys, it's an end of an era, it seems like. So the historic industrial conglomerate, General Electric, with over 100 years under its belt, is splitting up, it seems like. Very unfortunate here. It's taken the final step to become 3 separate companies. So GE's aerospace and energy business have officially begun trading on the New York Stock Exchange as their own entities here. So General Electric has grown vastly in size since famed inventor Thomas Edison merged his company with a rival to form GE in the 1800s, mind you. And since then, the company has run into some troubles and almost went bankrupt. During the 2008 financial crisis, CEO Larry Culp announced the breakup back in 2021, and this is a culmination of his efforts to actually try to sort of breathe a new life into the company, if you will. He's now the head of GE Aerospace, which makes engines for Boeing jets and Airbus jets. So after the spin-off, analysts value the company at more than $100 billion. Energy business has been named GE Verona. And as for its third entity, GE Healthcare business, that started trading on the NASDAQ more than a year ago, actually.
Wow, yeah, truly an end of an era. And I think Thomas Edison founded it in 1892, so truly an icon. And since then, a go-to for almost everything in America. All right, and let's go to Nippon Steel. So senators urge Biden to review its ties to China. Tell me what's behind that.
Yeah, very important here. So it looks like that the head of the Senate Banking Committee urged the White House, in fact, yesterday to scrutinize the relationship between Nippon Steel and the Chinese steel industry. So Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown cited security concerns in a letter sent to President Biden. Brown's concerns come amid bipartisan opposition, actually, in Congress to the Japanese company's almost $15 billion deal to buy U.S. steel. Brown cited a recent report by consultancy Horizon Advisory, and the Horizon report said Nippon has a history of supporting China's steel industry. So the report said Nippon operated in whole or in part in 9 facilities in China and have active joint ventures with a range of Chinese state-backed steel companies, champions. So Nippon Steel responded and saying that the Horizon report was full of inaccuracies in their defense and misrepresentations, and their Chinese operations make up less than 5% of its global production capacity. The White House and Horizon Advisory didn't immediately comment. And just quickly, this comes after President Biden actually, in fact, spoke on the phone with Chinese leader Xi Jinping nearly for 2 hours yesterday, and it marks the first conversation between the leaders since their historic in-person summit in November. Just a little bit more on that, actually. President Biden raised concerns about China's unfair trade policies, which do in fact harm American businesses, families as well, and the president emphasized that the United States will try to continue to take necessary action to prevent advanced U.S. technologies from getting into the hands of the Chinese regime and to undermine U.S. national security.
And on that note, Don, a Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania highlights the national security risks associated with the sale, saying that lousy policies are helping ship jobs overseas to places like China with, quote, meaningless worker and environmental standards. Staying on China, how well did Chinese EV maker BYD do last quarter?
Yeah, so this is also quite interesting to bring up because China's EV maker BYD is no longer the top dog in this sector, no longer the top dog in the electric vehicle market. So BYD took the title of world's biggest EV seller last year, and then since then it has returned the honor to none other than Tesla, American-owned company. So China's largest EV maker reported a 43% drop in sales in the first quarter of the year, and filings are showing that BYD sold about 300,000 EVs, and then if you compare that to the last quarter, it's 526,000. So a big difference here. So the last quarter is when actually it surpassed Tesla in sales. Both companies are expecting a downturn in EV sales growth this year in China. In fact, we're actually seeing a slowdown for Tesla in the U.S. here as well, because we just got its earnings report yesterday. And this slowdown is actually a first, it seems like, in nearly 4 years for the EV company. So despite price cuts, the electric vehicle maker has reported a fall in its quarterly deliveries. Now, in the first 3 months of the year, Tesla handed the keys to about 387,000 vehicles. That number is down 20% from the prior quarter. And Tesla seems like on track to lose about $30 billion in market value, but despite that, its market capitalization still well above the combined valuation of car companies, for example, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, and Porsche combined. So still pretty impressive right here. In January, Tesla warned that it would be focusing its production of its next generation EV, which it said, quote, would notably lower sales growth this year.
But still, quite a neck and neck for those two. But let's switch topics because I'm really curious to know about JetBlue's new bag fees.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, let's talk about that. So JetBlue's checked bag fees now going to vary based on departure date. Very interesting here. The price of a first checked bag now ranges from $30 to $50 depending on factors, including peak or off-peak travel dates. So on trains, on transatlantic flights, the first checked bag is still free except for customers flying on the cheapest fare, which is Blue Basic. And for those customers, the cost is now between $60 and $70, and price increases will usually be waived for flyers with an airline branded credit card for the highest level of the company's loyalty program. They're going to also be waived for those who buy tickets in JetBlue's premium mint cabin or tickets that includes checked bags.
Very interesting. I guess at least if it somewhat makes sense to not pay less for the bag, if not as much as happening on the plane, but also a very opaque pricing strategy there, so no clue what's happening. Thank you so much, Don Ma, host of NTD's Business Matters.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Don. And stick around. Hundreds of thousands without power as fierce storms wreak havoc in parts of the Ohio Valley, and punishing winds knock a university student off their feet. We have the video.
The Transportation Department moves to make rail transport safer, but not everyone's on board with the new rules.
Are you a veteran buying a home? VA loans are helpful, but now there's a twist. Will the seller be able to pay your realtor's commission anymore? A lender clears the confusion from a settlement when we come back.
Good to have you back. More than 275,000 homes and businesses across several states were without power last night. Those include West Virginia, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan.
This after a powerful system of thunderstorms brought damaging winds, dangerous hail, and reported tornadoes to parts of the Ohio Valley.
The damaging storms brought flooding, downed trees, power outages, and road blockages across West Virginia. At least 13 homes were damaged and some residents were injured.
14 tornadoes were confirmed yesterday across Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, Alabama, and Tennessee.
This possible tornado in Tennessee was caught on camera. Damaged telephone poles and storm-battered buildings show the storm's ferocity.
Cell phone video shows a University of Kentucky student being knocked over by the high winds. The university canceled classes due to the powerful gusts.
Storms will continue bringing threats of twisters, strong winds, and large hail into the region this morning before shifting to the East Coast. And a big shakeup at the University of Texas at Austin. The university has let go dozens of staff members involved in DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
The move is part of the university's efforts to follow a new state law.
The law essentially shuts down DEI efforts at public colleges in Texas. It came into effect on January 1st.
The law says public colleges can't have DEI officers or issue DEI statements anymore. They also can't use DEI statements in hiring or training.
The university announced the closure of the Division of Campus and Community Engagement, with its programs and funds moving elsewhere.
Around 60 positions tied to DEI work have been cut at the university, according to local reports. The university president said jobs involving students will still be there for the rest of the semester, and that laid-off workers can apply for other jobs at the university. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers vetoed a bill yesterday that would have required schools to designate sports teams as male, female, or mixed. The bill's authors say they aim to protect the safety of girls. Under the bill, only children designated male on their original birth certificate would be allowed to play on male teams. The same rule would apply for girls. The bill would also let girls bring private lawsuits against a school that violates the bill's terms. Governor Evers says he has repeatedly warned he would veto any bill that he called anti-LGBT. The bill passed the State House and Senate along party lines. Neither chamber has the needed 2/3 majority to override the governor's veto.
And a change to rail transport rules in light of recent disasters.
The Transportation Department's Federal Railroad Administration said yesterday it will require major railroads to have at least 2 crew members for most trips. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the rule change and reactions to it.
Rail unions have long opposed one-person crews, citing safety and job concerns. They say conductors are crucial in helping operate the train and keeping engineers alert, and that they serve as first responders. The AFL-CIO Union Federation praised the rule, saying 2-person crews are inherently necessary to ensure the safe operation of U.S. rail systems. The Federal Railroad Administration says it will continue to act to make rail transport safer.
When it comes to rail safety, we cannot accept business as usual.
Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg called it a good day for the safety of rail workers and passengers.
Before this rule, a railroad could unilaterally decide to just operate with 1 crew member without needing to check in with us.
The Association of American Railroads criticized the rule. They say 2-person crews have no proven connection to rail safety. Buttigieg scoffed at that, saying it's common sense that a moving object over 2 miles long should have at least 2 human beings on it. The issue of rail safety has garnered new attention since the February 2023 derailment of a Norfolk Southern-operated train in East Palestine, Ohio. The train caught fire and released over 1 million gallons of hazardous materials and pollutants. Bipartisan legislation in Congress to strengthen rail safety rules has stalled in the face of industry opposition. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Yeah, this derailment in Ohio certainly helped bring that into the spotlight, because there is an average of 3 derailments a day. Pete Buttigieg also said that.
That's 3 too many. And, President Biden is saying that this is long overdue, this measure here.
And let's switch to some topic that might be interesting for you if you're trying to buy a home. Do you use VA loan to buy a home? If so, you could be impacted by a new settlement reached by the National Association of Realtors.
It changed how closing costs are handled, and now VA loan users may not be able to have the seller pay their real estate agent's commission. Here's what Greg Freeman, the owner of Scissortail Financial Home Loans, told me about this.
Well, I think the hot topic right now has to do with buyer commissions when it comes to a veteran using a VA loan to buy a house. So it is currently a guideline of the VA home loan that veterans are prohibited from paying a buyer's real estate agent commission personally. Right? So traditionally, these expenses have been paid by the seller, and the seller, compensates the buyer's agent in addition to the listing agent. So if that remains in place, business will be, normal. But there will be situations to where the veteran buyer who's using a VA home loan to buy a house cannot get the seller to pay for the buyer's agent real estate agent commission. And so in that situation, that's going to create a roadblock on what is an effective way for that real estate agent to be compensated.
Yeah, and let's zoom out for a moment here. Brian Shepard, he's the president and CEO of Caldwell Banker Select. He says that the VA loan users, they're an overlooked segment of the market, and they shouldn't be. He says they should be held up high. They're the reason why we even have homes to buy in the first place. What advice do you have for people using these VA loans to buy a house right now in light of the settlement?
I mean, the best advice I can give everybody right now is to really focus on reputable, reliable sources of information. There's so much speculation, there's so much assumption happening right now. So I just continue to point my veteran clients towards the actual facts. And to me, the actual facts are 2 things. One, what is the current news press release that the National Association of Realtors has released to the public? That lists 3 separate items. One is the proposed, settlement agreement amount. 2 is the fact that they are going to remove compensation on the multi-list system, so that will not be stated anymore. And then number 3, that a buyer's, broker's agreement must be in place before negotiations are going to start with a seller to make an offer on a property. So those 3 things are fact. And then the other piece of information, especially for veterans, is what's the actual guideline, right? I mean, the guideline currently right now in this moment states that the veteran cannot pay directly the commission of a buyer's, real estate agent. And there's always been non-allowable closing costs that the veteran is not allowed to pay. So that's not new. It's just the way the potential structure of the transaction could be made could change. And so if that changes and the seller will not pay for the buyer's agent compensation and the veteran is left to pay for it, that's where the issue is going to be.
Well, thank you so much for that very important information. Greg Freeman, the owner and senior mortgage officer at Scissortail Financial Home Loans. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just ahead, the White House wants NASA to create a new time standard for the moon where time passes faster.
And can dogs understand words for specific objects? Researchers tackle this question in a new study done with our furry friends. That and more after the break.
Good to have you back. Oh, quick correction. It was the Transport Workers Union, not Biden, that called that long overdue, that rule that requires 2 crews on freight trains.
Got it. All right. In other news, the White House directed NASA yesterday to establish a unified time standard for the moon and other celestial bodies.
The U.S. aims to set international norms amid a growing lunar race among nations and private companies.
The White House told NASA and other agencies to create a plan for setting coordinated lunar time, or LTC. Differing gravitational forces on the moon and other celestial bodies change how time unfolds relative to how it's perceived on Earth. The LTC would provide a timekeeping benchmark for lunar spacecraft and satellites that require extreme precision.
A White House science and tech official said a unified time standard is needed to ensure that data transfer between spacecraft is secure and communication between Earth, lunar satellites, and astronauts is synchronized. The plan is expected by the end of 2026.
Quite some rocket science.
Yeah, that's a really great development, and it really shows you just how much the United States is putting an emphasis on space exploration to beat China, especially.
Right. We definitely see that coming through now. But on some less serious, or more, also staying on science actually, we're asking, can dogs understand words for specific objects?
A new study says yes, and that dogs picture the object in their minds when they hear its name, much like human beings. Take a look.
This border collie named Rohan was part of the study out of Budapest. Researchers at Eötvös Loránd University measured her brain activity. As her owner said words for objects she knew.
Dogs came to the lab and they didn't just listen to something that is not important for them, but they came with their own toys that they usually play with. And what happened during the experiment is that the owner showed the toy and then put it away, and then showed another toy and put it away.
18 dogs participated in the study. In some cases, the owners would present the dog with an object that matched the word.
Rohan, ¿dónde está Frisbee?
In other cases, the object didn't match.
Rohan, ¿dónde está Frisbee?
The results showed that there was a different pattern in the dog's brains when the words matched the objects compared to when they didn't, just like humans.
There has been a long debate on a non-human animal's ability to understand words referentially. Understanding the meaning of a word would mean that there is a so-called memory of that object in the dog's mind. We call it a mental representation in psychology, and that hearing the word will activate this mental representation in the dog's mind.
Boros said the study is the first to claim the ability to understand referential language is present across the species. The researchers plan to examine if this ability is specific to dogs or might be present in other mammals as well.
So cute.
Hopefully they got extra treats for doing that study.
Absolutely. I think they can understand much more. I think University of California is doing a research on Bunny the talking dog. So maybe if anybody has some time, check that out. But we're certainly out of time at this moment. We're going to head to a quick break, but we'll be right back with more.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are our top stories. Taiwan hit with a 7.4 magnitude earthquake earlier today. Authorities say at least 9 people are dead and over 900 injured. 75 people stranded in various tunnels have all been rescued by emergency responders, but the severity of the injuries is not yet known.
In the wake of the Baltimore bridge collapse, a Maryland lawmaker on helping those whose jobs are disrupted, plus efforts to recover bodies of victims and gain access to the port via the main channel.
President Biden and former President Trump coast to victory in yesterday's presidential primaries. What the numbers tell us about the upcoming election.
Trump's attorneys are asking a judge to recuse himself from the so-called hush money case, arguing the judge is conflicted by his daughter's political work.
Israel yesterday apologized for an airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, and the Pentagon says Israel was behind another airstrike in Syria that reportedly killed top Iranian commanders.
A centuries-old horse festival continues in Bulgaria. It's part of a local tradition to welcome Lent and spring.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd.
So glad they rescued those Taiwanese people from those tunnels.
Absolutely. Yeah. Glad that that development came through. And we're heading to those, this news actually topping our show this hour. Taiwan was hit by its strongest earthquake in 25 years today at around 8 a.m. local time. Rescue teams are rushing to free dozens of people trapped in highway tunnels after the 7.4 magnitude tremor on the island's east coast, which we heard was successful.
Yes, which is excellent there. Officials say at least 9 people are dead and over 900 injured. The quake sparked tsunami warnings across the region as authorities ordered evacuations. That included warnings in southern Japan and the Philippines. That warning has since been lifted, but officials told people to stay alert.
Several strong aftershocks and tremors were felt across the island. Authorities say at least 125 buildings collapsed and over 100 buildings were damaged. The full extent of the impact is still being assessed.
Taiwan's National Fire Agency says over 130 people are still trapped in road tunnels after the quake. 75 people stranded in various tunnels in Hualien County have all been rescued by emergency responders. The severity of the injuries is not yet known. The NFA said all the deaths were in Hualien County, including 3 hikers killed by falling rocks at a tourist spot called Taroko Gorge. Rescuers this morning headed to 12 people stuck on a trail there. The group includes 2 Canadians. The agency said falling rocks also killed a truck driver in the region.
Officials say thousands of homes were left without power and a major highway closed due to landslides and rockfalls. Taiwan's Defense Ministry dispatched military personnel to help with disaster relief. Schools and workplaces suspended operations as aftershocks hit.
Taiwan's Central Weather Administration is warning that powerful aftershocks as high as magnitude 7 are expected until the end of the week. We'll keep you updated on the crisis in Taiwan.
And just before the earthquake, Taiwan's Defense Ministry said it detected 30 Chinese regime aircraft and 9 naval vessels operating around the island. That was up until 6 a.m. local time.
The Defense Ministry said 20 of the aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait Meridian Line and also the southwest area of its air defense identification zone.
Crews at the Baltimore Bridge collapse site opened a second temporary channel yesterday. The channel is meant to allow a limited amount of traffic around the mangled wreckage.
Debris has blocked the vital port's main shipping route since the disaster 1 week ago.
The channels are open mostly for ships in the cleanup effort, along with some barges and tugs stuck in the Baltimore port.
Officials said yesterday crews are working to open a third channel to let bigger vessels through.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore said rough weather has added daunting challenges over the past 2 days.
Officials say diving conditions to recover bodies of 4 construction workers believed to be trapped under the wreckage are still unsafe. For an update on the situation, we hear from Maryland State Senator Johnny Ray Salling. Senator Salling, great to have you with us here. Let's start with the recovery of the workers' bodies. Governor Wes Moore says they are focused on bringing closure to the families of the victims, but that there's no timeline for that due to the complex nature of the situation. How are efforts going?
They're going steady, and they're trying to do the best and safest way that they can do this. As you know, that bridge was a life source to a lot of people in the area. And knowing that they're there with 1,000 ton crane, one 400 ton crane, and 300 ton cranes, and they're trying to move in the fastest way that they can, but the safest way that they can.
Yes, and hopefully those efforts can proceed and streamline this process so those families can have some relief finally. Work has nearly slowed to a complete standstill at the port as the state providing unemployment support with under 200 workers making claims at this point. What's being done to help those whose jobs are on the line?
Well, yesterday, myself and the president of the Senate presented a bill. It was Senate Bill 1188, and what that bill will do, it will help out those workers, the LIA, the longshoremen, to not just get unemployment, but also get another part of a fund through the state of Maryland to make sure that they can pay their bills, that they can get groceries, that they can, if they have car payments or other things that are important to them, it's going to assist them in a matter of time. And so we're processing that bill as we speak speedily. We had the hearing yesterday. It will be on the Senate floor today.
Yes, and Senator Salling, just so many people whose lives are affected by this. The workers that unload ships at the port, they're operating cranes, and they're also receiving and delivering that cargo here. Officials say the U.S. Coast Guard has successfully opened a temporary channel that cleanup vessels can use there, and then there was a second temporary channel that was open, and now there's a deeper third channel in the works here. What's the status of these immediate steps to eventually gain access, these intermediate steps to eventually gain access to the port through the main channel?
Well, the first opening they had, they were making sure that it was accessible to small barges that were able to bring fuel back and forth in the areas that they're working with the crane. The second one was also for smaller vessels and tugs. And the third one will be much bigger, that we can hopefully bring more ships through there. But the time will tell, because each stage we're finding out more and more about the things that are in the way, that are, the things that we can't see. So I know right now we're able to do and maneuver a little better than before. But this third stage, hopefully we'll be able to do a whole lot more.
Yeah, those divers had their work cut out for them, just trying to break up that wreckage, the superstructure there, all that twisted steel. What more can you tell us about this? What's next in this crisis management?
More than anything, we're trying to move forward with the 4 that are still missing. We want to get closure on that more than anything for our families. We have a lot of groups that are helping in this endeavor throughout the state of Maryland and throughout the nation, and their prayers. But we're doing all that we can to make sure we get closure in that. When we get closure on that, we're able to do a whole lot more and process faster and do it again, no matter what, in a safe manner. I know they want to get the ship out of the way. And so that's a big task. I know that we got to move that so we can unload that at the same time. Then that will give us opportunity to go into the deep port, and we can bring ships in and ships out.
Just a few more seconds here, Senator Salling. Massive operation underway here. What do you want Americans to know about this whole unfolding of events?
I want to let them know that the Port of Baltimore is the third most important port in the nation for moving cargo. It's #1 in roll-on, roll-off of vehicles and tractors and farmers. And we're doing all that we can to make sure that this port is open safely and the workers can get back to work.
Well, thank you for your diligent efforts there. Maryland State Senator Johnny Ray Salling.
And back to the U.S., 4 states went to the polls yesterday in the presidential primaries.
But some voters didn't see the point in voting for candidates who are already presumptive nominees.
President Biden and former President Trump clinched their party's nominations earlier this year.
Both won easily in Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, and Wisconsin. But the numbers show a deeper discontent among American voters.
Rhode Island and Connecticut saw a significant percentage of uncommitted votes in the Democratic primaries.
And some Republican voters are still voting for Trump's rivals, who have already dropped out of the race.
Wisconsin voters approved 2 election-related amendments to the state constitution through ballot measures in yesterday's primary.
The GOP-backed measures ban private funds from election administration and closely define the role of an election worker. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the new measures.
Wisconsin voters are projected to approve 2 amendments to the state's constitution after answering questions on Tuesday's ballot. Private money to fund elections will be banned in the Badger State in response to grants in 2020 from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, known as Zuckerbucks. Some Republicans argue the money helped Democratic turnout in the state's largest cities that year and unfairly shaped the outcome of the election. Biden won Wisconsin by less than 21,000 votes. The second measure will only allow officials designated by law to administer elections. That's already state law, but putting it in the Constitution makes it more difficult to repeal or change. The Associated Press projected both measures to pass with over 50% of the vote and 80% of precincts reporting. Opponents argue the amendments make no guarantee of increased government funding to help run elections once private sources are banned. Some say the measures could create unintended obstacles, like stopping local clerks from accepting donated supplies, or the use of privately owned buildings as polling places. Both ballot measures were in reaction to grant money that came from the Center for Tech and Civic Life in 2020. It received a $300 million donation that year from Zuckerberg and his wife for election officials to buy protective supplies and run elections during the COVID pandemic. The Wisconsin Republican Party stated Wisconsin sent a clear message. Elections belong to voters, not out-of-state billionaires. At least 27 states have outlawed or restricted private election grants since 2020. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And just one more correction, that's the above water cuts that are being made by those workers in the lifts, not the divers. The divers are working on other things.
Got it. For now, we're going to politics. Former President Trump is asking for the judge to recuse himself from the so-called hush money case.
Trump's lawyers argue that the judge's daughter, who works as a Democratic political consultant, poses a potential conflict of interest.
Trump made a similar request last year for Justice Juan Merchan to recuse himself, but the judge denied to do so after an ethics panel found that his daughter's work did not pose questions about his impartiality.
In a court filing dated April 1st, Trump's lawyers argued the trial would financially benefit Merchan's daughter's firm, Authentic Campaigns. The company describes itself as a progressive political consulting firm.
Meanwhile, Trump posted a $175 million bond in his civil fraud case. This will temporarily keep his properties from being seized.
A judge found Trump liable for $454 million in total, saying he and his company executives lied about Trump's net worth for tax benefits.
And former Trump advisor Peter Navarro is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to allow him to remain out of prison while he appeals his contempt of Congress case. Navarro submitted an emergency request last month. It was denied, and he reported to prison the following day. Now he wants the Supreme Court to reconsider. Navarro has served 15 days of his 4-month sentence. Supreme Court rules allow parties whose emergency applications are denied by a single justice to resubmit that request to another justice. In a letter yesterday, Navarro's attorneys asked Justice Neil Gorsuch to review his request. Navarro was found guilty of contempt of Congress for defying subpoenas from the January 6th House panel. And coming up, Israel issued an apology for an airstrike that killed international aid workers in Gaza on Monday.
Meanwhile, another airstrike in Syria reportedly killed top Iranian commanders. Israel has not claimed responsibility, but it's stoking fears of a wider conflict. And hundreds of thousands without power as fierce storms wreak havoc in parts of the Ohio Valley, and punishing winds knock a university student off their feet. We have the video.
A centuries-old traditional horse festival continues in Bulgaria. See how this region of the Balkan nation welcomes Lent and spring coming up. Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to an update on Israel's war against Hamas. Israel yesterday apologized for an airstrike that killed aid workers in Gaza.
And another airstrike in Syria leads to fears of escalation in the conflict. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
Israel's military chief said early on Wednesday that misidentification led to strikes that killed 7 international aid workers with the World Central Kitchen in Gaza on Monday.
I want to be very clear. The strike was not carried out with the intention of harming WCK aid workers. It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions. It shouldn't have happened.
The food charity founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres said it was immediately suspending operations in the region. Israel's military said an independent body would conduct a thorough investigation that would be completed in the coming days. The deaths of the aid workers threatens to set back efforts by the U.S. and others working on a sea route to bring aid from Cyprus. Those killed include 3 British nationals, an Australian, a Polish national, and an American-Canadian dual citizen. Some of Israel's closest allies condemned the incident. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he expressed his nation's outrage to his Israeli counterpart, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This is completely unacceptable. When I spoke with the Prime Minister, I emphasised the importance of full accountability and transparency.
Yesterday, the Pentagon said Israel was behind another airstrike in Damascus, Syria. The strike reportedly killed 7 people, including 2 top Iranian commanders, at what Iran described as its consulate. Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh denied any U.S. involvement in the attack and said they were not notified by the Israelis about their intentions.
Customs officials are working to deport over 200 illegal immigrants charged in a riot at the El Paso, Texas border last month. A Customs and Immigration Enforcement official told the Epoch Times yesterday that ICE agents had lodged immigration detainers on 215 people involved in the incident. Video shared on social media showed hundreds of illegal immigrants rushing troops at a border fence after a group tore down razor wire. The Texas Department of Public Safety arrested the group and booked them at the El Paso County Court. A judge ordered some to be released on their own recognizance. The ICE spokesperson stated 64 individuals have been taken into ICE custody to date and are being processed for deportation. He said deportation officers arrested 4 involved in the stampede over the weekend after the El Paso County Detention Facility released them. The spokesperson said another 60 were released directly to enforcement and removal operations on Monday after being processed in the detention facility.
And more than 275,000 homes and businesses across several states were without power last night. Those include West Virginia, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan.
This after a powerful system of thunderstorms brought damaging winds, dangerous hail, and reported tornadoes to parts of the Ohio Valley.
The damaging storms brought flooding, downed trees, power outages, and road blockages across West Virginia. At least 13 homes were damaged and some residents were injured.
14 tornadoes were confirmed yesterday across Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, Alabama, and Tennessee.
This possible tornado in Tennessee was caught on camera. Damaged telephone poles and storm-battered buildings show the storm's ferocity.
Cell phone video shows a University of Kentucky student being knocked over by high winds. The university canceled classes due to the powerful gusts.
Storms will continue bringing threats of twisters, strong winds, and large hail into the region this morning before shifting to the East Coast. And in some more softer news, in a village in Bulgaria, residents mark the start of Lent with a horse festival.
Horse racing and breeding are an important part of the fabric of their village life, dating back centuries. Here's the story.
Bačevo, Bulgaria, a picturesque village located in the foothills of the Rila Mountains south of the Bulgarian capital, Sofia. The village has a centuries-long tradition of horse breeding.
The horse was an integral part of people's existence. On this day, we honor the animals and the people who work with them.
St. Theodore's Day, also called Horse Eater, falls on the first Saturday of Lent in the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church. The celebration has become an integral part of local Easter celebrations.
St. Theodore has been celebrated since time immemorial as the patron saint of horses and horse riders, by people who use these animals to make a living as well as to fight.
Villagers mark the occasion by gathering to watch and compete horses' strength and speed. The culmination of the day's celebration are the horse races, or kushi.
We have been participating for a long time. We have had the horse for 6 years and have been first place 10 times and have come second place twice with him in the heavy load competition.
The holiday is a combination of Eastern Orthodox symbolism and more ancient meanings.
St. Theodore's Day is the first of a series of spring holidays when nature wakes up to new life. It's a tribute to nature in general and not just to the horses.
The celebrations also have a practical purpose. They give owners and potential buyers a chance to assess the health, strength, and speed of horses after the long winter.
It just reminds me of the idyllic times.
Oh yeah, and I think it's just really great to learn about all these different cultures. It's great that we have some positive news to wrap up the show today.
Yeah, I know. It looks like they were having a lot of fun. They were going pretty fast at the end there.
Right. And I think it's really, you know, the significance of horses, because I'm interested, so I Googled it a little bit. The significance of horses goes really far back into the ancient times of Bulgaria. And they say that it's a horse is immune to all evil, even to disease. So the person riding the horse would be blocked from that as well.
Wow, that's impressive.
To give you an idea, yeah.
Maybe horses need to give some classes on that.
Yeah, right. All right, on that note, we wrap up our show now, but be sure to stay tuned for NTD's News Today broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And also for round-the-clock original news coverage, you can visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.